Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I'll be reviewing Scarlet Citadel for 5e from Kobold Press. Is this old-school inspired dungeon delve a must-have to add to your D&D adventure collection? Or will you find that your face is turning scarlet in anger when you learn about the circumstances around getting the most out of this adventure? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I'll be reviewing Scarlet Citadel from Kobold Press in just a couple of moments. But first off, I want to mention a couple of things. Number one, we are in the midst of the Gaming Gang October Spooktacular 2021. And that means each and every day you're going to find a new tabletop-related video on thegaminggang.com and, of course, here on the Gaming Gang YouTube channel. So it might be a first look, could be a review, such as this video, or if it's Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, it'll be my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, which airs at 7 p.m. Central as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news and first looks at tabletop games. And join me every evening at 9 p.m. Central as I'll be hosting a spooky old-time radio show destined to put a chill down your spine. So stop by and enjoy some Halloween fun over at thegaminggang.com. Second, I do have a contest winner to announce. They are going to receive a PDF copy of Scarlet Citadel, as well as the Creature Codex from Kobold Press. Stay tuned. I'll announce the winner. It's not going to be right at the end of the video either, so keep your eyes peeled and your ears open. All right, that said, today I'll be reviewing Scarlet Citadel for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It is from Kobold Press. It's written by Steve Winter with Wolfgang Bauer, Scott Gable, and Victoria Jaxo, with artwork provided by David Auden-Nash, John Pintar, Miguel Rigaudin Harkness, Marcel Mercado, William O'Brien, Sam Perrin, Florian Stitz, Brian Syme, and Ijil Thompson. And I apologize right up front, so I guarantee I've mispronounced some folks' names there. This 202-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $39.99. You can get the hardcover and PDF together over at Kobold Press for $44.99, or you can just grab the PDF alone over at DriveThruRPG for $24.99. So let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Scarlet Citadel. So I did a first look video on one of the live episodes of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, and that's when I announced the contest. So we're going to dive in here, and I am going to point out a few things before we jump on in. First off, the fine folks over at Kobold Press were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this adventure with you. These days, it's very important for you to know that. Also, I'm going to stay picture-in-picture up here, so I am going to be cutting off a little bit of the upper left-hand corner of the book. Also, I'm going to page through. I am not going to page through every single page. I'm going to discuss some of my thoughts about each of the levels of this dungeon, as well as overall feel for the adventure as well. And lastly, here there be spoilers. Although I try to stay as spoiler-free as possible, there are going to be spoilers aplenty in this review. So if you are a player who's hoping that your Dungeon Master is going to run Scarlet Citadel then I would definitely recommend tuning out now. Tell your dungeon master about this video, but I would recommend as a player that you tune out. All right, enough of that. Let's jump on in. Let's take a look at the back real quick. Share a little bit of the flavor. Do you dare descend into the sorcerer's gloom? Once a fortress where wizards honed their eldritch craft, the Scarlet Citadel now holds a sinister reputation, and for good reason. The dungeon's well-trod stairs have seen few return from their journeys below. Now malevolent creatures spin shadowy webs, enchant foul magics, and summon forth dark gods. But for those brave enough, ancient treasures and secrets lie scattered everywhere. Let's talk about what's in the adventure. We will cover that within. So we're going to jump on in. We're going to start off. We're going to get a bit of an introduction, and it's going to discuss each of the levels. There are 6, plus a 0 level, which just has a little bit to it above ground. And then it's also going to discuss ley lines and the different maps. So I'm going to point out that to really get the most out of this adventure, you need to own some other Kobold Press books. And there's discussion of overlays for these maps. And that's only available in the map pack, which is, it includes poster maps and the overlays. And that carries an MSRP of $39.99, the same price as this adventure. I will talk about that in more depth when I wrap up my review. So we get a bit of a background about the dungeon itself and kind of the philosophy of this dungeon, where this is more of an old school sort of 5e adventure. So it harkens back to advanced Dungeons and Dragons back in the day. So there are areas in this dungeon where you can easily have a total party kill, which is very unlike most 5e adventures. So there's some discussion about that. There's discussion about the characters advancing in level, lock picking. And for an example, one of the aspects of the adventure is if player characters fail at something, they can't keep rolling dice until they succeed. That kind of defeats the purpose of the challenge that they face. So as an example, picking locks, if a character fails, anybody who tries to pick a lock, if they fail, they cannot try again until they've leveled up. So I do like that. So we have a village, which is kind of a destination for adventurers who are going to try to get into the Scarlet Citadel. And this is kind of a village that has grown up around the Citadel to supply adventurers who are going forth to their doom effectively. So we get a bit of background about the town itself. We get locations, we get gossip, we get some encounters that we can utilize as well around the town. Get some ideas for maybe some little side quests as well within. Pretty well done. I think that there's a lot to utilize from this town of Red Tower. So I like the town presentation as well. So we get to level 0, which are the ruins above. And there's not really much here before the player characters will descend into this dungeon. So there's some harpies, there's an owl bear, and outside of that, that's kind of it. Now, I do want to point out that this adventure is designed to take characters from 1st level through 8th level. So, of course, starting off from scratch, you would think 1st level characters taking on an owl bear? That ain't going to happen. Well, there is some advice how to utilize this ruins above the Citadel itself, where maybe the 3rd time the player characters venture back up from the Citadel itself, maybe that's when they run across the owl bear. Maybe they've encountered some debris and some indications that there is an owl bear here. So you're not going to throw the owlbear at them when they first stumble across the entrance to the Scarlet Citadel. So that's important to keep in mind as well. Throughout the adventure, there are bits of advice on how to run the adventure to keep the excitement high, to keep the tension high. And some of it involves fudging dice rolls or not really making dice rolls, but kind of predetermining what's going to happen during a certain encounter or set piece. I do want to point out some game masters, dungeon masters are not going to like that. Others will say, yeah, okay. Myself personally, coming from running Call of Cthulhu for decades, I understand the concept of not necessarily railroading players, but kind of pushing them along into a certain direction or having an idea how something's going to play out ahead of time because the story is the thing. The dice rolls are not the thing. The story is the thing. Most of the time, experienced role players are not going to sit there and talk about the great times they had when they rolled that natural 20. Beginning players tend to focus more on, oh, wow, remember when I had that bonus and I rolled a 20? But experienced role players don't look back at memories from their adventures with the, oh, wow, I squeaked out that die roll. No, they remember what happened in the adventure. That's also something to keep in mind. So we get into 6 different levels of the Citadel itself. I got to be honest, the first 4 levels I really do like. I will point out we've got some faction play within on the various different levels. One aspect of the dungeon that kind of leaves me scratching my head is in some of these levels, there's not a lot of integration with the levels above or below. There is with some major characters, major NPCs, but all in all, it doesn't build into what to me is a realistic kind of ecosystem of this dungeon. Now, of course, there are a lot of people out there, they don't care. They have absolutely no qualms about having completely separate dungeons, especially if you've played like a mega dungeon. A lot of times there's very little tying the different levels together. There is some involved in Scarlet Citadel, but not as much as I would have liked. And I'll give you a great example. One of the levels further down talks about how the creatures on that level tend to leave and go raiding the outside world. That's kind of like, how? Are they going to come all the way up through the other levels of the dungeon? And supposedly these creatures and characters who are on those other levels don't know anything about these creatures. Some of it doesn't make a ton of sense. Like I said, there's going to be gamers and dungeon masters out there who won't care. But to me, it kind of threw me off a little bit. But once again, as I mentioned, I like the first 4 levels of the dungeon. So that the first level we run across, we've got this Goler, and they love torturing characters who come in, adventurers who come into the Scarlet Citadel. It's kind of played off that the vast majority of the adventurers who try to explore the Scarlet Citadel actually get killed early on in this first level, and their bodies are disposed of as well. So pretty interesting first level. Second level, I think, is very, very cool. It's an arcane scriptorium, which was built by the elves. And one of the aspects I think is very, very cool with this is that after the elves have gathered up all this phenomenal knowledge, they realize, what have we done? We put all this information that could be devastatingly deadly to everyone in this one location. So what they do is they use magic to actually throw the scriptorium into the future by thousands and thousands of years. And one of the concepts that run throughout the Scarlet Citadel is that of time and how areas of the Citadel exist in two places in different times. So I thought that was kind of interesting. You get more into it later on into the adventure, but I do dig the whole fact with the scriptorium and the player characters are going to find it mainly in ruins, but they have the opportunity to actually travel way into the future and utilize the scriptorium. So I thought that was very interesting as well. So pretty cool. The maps themselves are pretty neat. I like these. I believe these are John Pinter maps. So very nicely done. Although, once again, some of the things kind of throw me off in this book. And as I already mentioned, there's discussion of, okay, use this overlay on this map, but the overlays are part of the map pack, which is an additional purchase. So that's kind of odd. There's also like mention of like a cavern that's supposed to be huge, but it's actually 90 feet long. And to me, 90 feet isn't that huge because a player character can cover that distance in like 2 or 3 combat rounds. So, I don't know, throws me off a little bit. Some of the read aloud is a little odd as well, where there's information being given to the player characters that they should not have, such as in one instance, it's mentioned that there's an unlocked chest. How would the player characters know that chest is unlocked? I mean, just at the first glance. There's also an area where there's some casks, and it says the casks are full of water, but they're sealed casks. So how would the player characters know that? Once again, there's just some little aspects to the adventure that don't add up. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad adventure. Like I said, I like quite a lot of it. I'm just pointing out that as a dungeon master, as an experienced dungeon master, you're going to tweak some of these things as well. Sometimes the maps feel a little crowded too. Something else I should mention is, unlike most old school dungeon delves, every room seems to have something going on, which in one way is cool, but in other ways, it's kind of strange that every single room, for the most part, has something going on within it. There's no kind of empty rooms or empty space, really. So moving right along, so we get into the different levels. So we've got a level that was kind of a dwarf stronghold that's pretty interesting. There are some pretty cool traps within here as well. There are sections that, once again, as I mentioned, this adventure leans old school, where something's going to happen. It's going to be damaging to party members, and there's no way around it. It just is going to happen. So there are some areas here, as an example, if the player characters like bust in this one door, then the stone above the door collapses in on top of them. No way around it. There's no, roll a saving throw, and if you succeed, then nothing happens to you. That does not happen. And there are some set pieces like that throughout this adventure. Then we move on to the 4th level. We got the Bat Caverns. This is where I thought it was kind of strange. So we have these cultists, but once again, this is where it's kind of cool, where we got some faction play. So we've got these kind of sort of like dark dwarves. They're kind of offshoots of dwarves. They are specifically located, I believe, in the Creature Codex. And they're broken into 2 factions who are kind of at odds with each other. And then there's also a powerful NPC that both of these factions would not mind taking down. So with this level here, it's kind of also interesting because it talks about there's a couple of different approaches. So if your player characters are more full steam ahead, let's kill everything that moves, doing the murder hobo routine, there's one way to present this level. And then if they're more along the lines of negotiation, diplomacy, trying to utilize different factions or turn factions against each other, there's also a way to run this level just like that as well. So pretty interesting. This is where it seems to me, this is one of those levels that seems like it's too compacted. It's not spread out enough, that this should actually be a much bigger area than what's actually shown on the map. But there's some interesting aspects to this level as well. So we've got these various important NPCs that kind of, some of them know of others below, but they don't know about like the big bad who's located on the 5th level. And the actual big deal is located on the 6th level, the final level, which is the Black River, which I like this level. I think this has some really cool set pieces within. This is where we're going to be introduced to the big bad, who is essentially a sorcerer who's studying not only the Black River, but the next level below actually has a sphere of annihilation. And he's kind of studying that. And it's kind of interesting because when the player characters encounter him, it's not just combat. He's going to try to convince the player characters to go into the level below him and kind of check out some stuff. And he's more interested in how the player characters are going to be killed than anything else, really. So Black River is very interesting. We have some cool NPCs that could become kind of running battles almost, or a continual thorn in the side of the player characters. I like that. One aspect of this is there's a lich, and the player characters are probably not going to be able to defeat the lich without resurrecting this river god. And the funny thing is, or river lord, I should say, who's undead. But the interesting thing is that they're evil too. So the player characters are going to have to utilize this one evil NPC to defeat the big bad NPC. So there are some dilemmas that are going to face the player characters in this as well. There is a lot going on in this 5th level. So I want to point, there's a level above that I found pretty interesting as well. It's a level that's mainly controlled by Trollkin. And that becomes kind of a cat and mouse game, sort of like a running battle that things are going to swing back and forth between the players and the Trollkin. I thought that was pretty cool as well. This is our big bad who's on the 5th level as well. So there's cool stuff in this adventure. There's a lot of stuff that I really like. It's just, some of it just doesn't tie together well. Also should mention that the final level, the 6th level below, here's the lich that the player characters need to defeat. Once again, pointing out that things feel kind of cramped. So we've got the lich, we've got the river lord, we've got the big bad sorcerer. They're all on this level. And like I said, things kind of feel cramped. So we have the final level. And I got to point out, I wasn't really too keen on it. I think it's there's far too much of an environmental challenge that the player characters have to face kind of throughout the entire level. And I think many player characters will get kind of tired of it. Now there's ways to combat that, but they're not easy. And essentially the player characters have to get to a certain point where they're going to be able to not necessarily completely stop this environmental challenge, but at least nip a lot of it in the bud. And then the way the adventure kind of wraps up is that if the player characters are able to destroy the sphere of annihilation, it just kind of ends like that. Now, on the information about the 5th level, does talk about how the evil sorcerer is going to ambush the player characters when they come back from the 6th level. And he'll be really ticked off if the player characters have destroyed that sphere of annihilation. But you kind of have to jump back to that. So the way this final level, this kind of final area plays out, isn't real intuitive as far as I looked at it. Once again, I'm not real super keen on this final level. If I were running this adventure, I might look at some other way to wrap this up, as opposed to using the 6th level of the Citadel. Something else I want to point out, I had mentioned with the level above that the player characters need to be able to utilize one NPC to defeat another NPC. The same thing kind of happens here, where the player characters have to make a deal with a genie who gives them a relative fighting chance to destroy the sphere of annihilation. And even in the book itself, it talks about, well, you can have one of the player characters actually take control of the genie, especially if they've had a character that's dead. And I guess they're just kind of sitting around the table watching everybody else play. So I thought it was kind of weird where it's sort of like, okay, on the 5th level, you need to use one NPC against the other NPC. And then the level right below it, it's kind of along the same lines. There is it's a huge sphere of annihilation. All right, so then we're going to finish up. We're going to have a bit of a bestiary with some monsters, NPCs. We've got some new spells as well. We do have a new kind of magical item. Show that in a moment. But here we've got the various different magic items that the players are going to encounter throughout the Scarlet Citadel. Some of these are very cool. Some of those are really interesting. So then we've got our new deep magic spells. And the Witch's Walk Bazaars. That's what I'm talking about. This is a new consumable magic item that can be utilized in your 5e games. And I thought this was kind of interesting as well. Then we got some handouts. And that's how we're going to wrap up the adventure. All right. So we've kind of taken a peek through the adventure. I've talked a little bit about some stuff. Once again, trying to stay spoiler free with this. So let's swing on over to the other camera because I am going to announce, first of all, the winner of the contest. And the winner who's going to receive a PDF copy of Scarlet Citadel as well as the Creature Codex from Kobold Press is Christopher Rush. Christopher, do me a favor. Reach out to Jeff McAleer at thegaminggang.com. Give me the email address that's associated with your YouTube account. I will forward that on to Wolfgang Bauer from Kobold Press, and he will set you up with the free PDF. So congratulations. Do want to point out, it was really easy to get into this contest. I always make the contest pretty easy. You did need to be a subscriber to the channel. So I have to point out the first name that I selected who would have won because they had to comment on my first look video to get into the running. First name I picked was not a subscriber, so they didn't win. Yeah, got to play by the rules I set out. All right, so congratulations to Christopher. All right, let me wrap up, provide some final thoughts and my review score. So I know I focused on, some parts of the adventure don't seem to add up, and there isn't just an ecosystem for the dungeon delve that really ties a lot of things together. I'm probably nitpicking a little bit, but I happen to be kind of tough on adventures because there's certain ways that I like my fantasy adventures to be kind of put together. That said, there's a lot that I like about Scarlet Citadel, especially the first 5 levels. I think there is a lot of really great gameable material here that is going to keep your player characters and players occupied for a good long time. So, I do like the adventure. I think it's a good adventure. I don't necessarily think it's a fantastic adventure, but I do like it, and I would run it. Now, here's an issue that I run into that I think is going to be a problem for a lot of people out there. So I have to point out that if you own a lot of the Kobold Press releases, like the Creature Codex, the Tome of Beasts, Deep Magic, as well as the Midgard World Book, then by all means, I would say, pick up Scarlet Citadel, even though I've got some issues with the adventure itself. But if you do not have those books, there's going to be a problem. So first off, over 70 monsters referred to in this adventure are only available in either the Creature Codex or Tome of Beasts. Now, off the top of my head, I don't remember any references to the Tome of Beasts 2. There might be, but I don't remember seeing it. So you've got over 70 monsters that you need to have those two books. And the thing is, as you go further into the Citadel, as you go down in levels, you find more and more of these that you need to have. I also mentioned that there's references to overlays on the maps, but that's part of the map pack, which is $39.99, the same price as the hardcover adventure. There's references to Deep Magic. Don't have that book? Well, you're going to have to kind of, wing it, which is sort of the same thing. If you don't have the two bestiaries, you're going to have to wing that as well. There's also some references to the World Book for Midgard. I don't think that's too big a deal. So here's the issue I've got. At no point in time is there any reference made that you need to have these other releases in order to really get the most out of Scarlet Citadel. None. It's not on the Kobold Press page. It's not on the DriveThruRPG page. It's not referenced on the back of the hardcover book. It is kind of mentioned within, but for the most part, you already have to own it to get to that point where it's saying, hey, you really should have at least Creature Codex and Tome of Beasts to be able to use this adventure. That, to me, is a problem. So I have to say, if you already have those books, hey, you know what? Then this is probably, this is about an 8 out of 10 as far as a review score. If you've got those books, I'll be very honest. I got a bunch of stuff from Kobold Press to review at Gen Con. Wolfgang Bauer was super, super nice. Really enjoyed interviewing him. I just reviewed the Midgard World Book. Thought it was fantastic. Gave it a 10 out of 10. Funny thing is, I don't have the Tome of Beasts, and I don't have the Creature Codex. So the reality is, I wouldn't really be able to run this adventure as written. And that's a super bummer. So if you don't have those books, then I really would drop the score of this down to about a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10, because you could invest extra work into the adventure and still salvage it. It'd be a lot of work. So all in all, if I average all that out, I'm going to say that Scarlet Citadel gets a 6.5 out of 10. I like the adventure. I hate the fact that to get the most out of the adventure, you got to own a whole lot of other stuff. I got to call it as I see it, folks. As much as I really have dug what I've read from Kobold Press so far, I got to say, if you don't own their books, this might be a hard pass. But if you do own the books, I would say pick it up. This is a very difficult review. I got to say, I was not looking forward to providing this review because I don't like having to sit there and say, hey, you know what? That's kind of dirty pool, making people have to own all these books, but you don't tell them ahead of time. All right. That is it for this time out. If you happen to like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also tell you when my live stream airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. That's right, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news and first looks at tabletop games. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang YouTube channel, by all means, visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for stopping in to watch this video. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy some really great gaming with your own gang. Oh, you're still here. Well, while you're kicking it, how about subscribing to the Gaming Gang channel? Or seeing the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch? Or finding out what YouTube recommends you check out here at my channel? And of course, don't forget, get your geek on at thegaminggang.com.